The 11.5-metre ketch with 3 crew members berthed at the number 4 Lee Wharf this morning. The trip to Newcastle is part of a new campaign by Greenpeace this year on anti-nuclear weapons at sea. Greenpeace anti-nuclear coordinator Faith Doherty says the stop at Newcastle seems appropriate because it has hosted nuclear-armed vessels.
We've had 4, I think, since 1984. We have the bicentennial celebrations next year, in which there will definitely be nuclear-armed vessels visiting various ports around Australia.
What worries you most about a nuclear-armed vessel here in Newcastle?
Well, quite a few things. First of all, Australia is a nuclear-free country, and we don't want nuclear weapons here, and when the ships come in, they're here. Secondly, it's inconsistent with the ALP's policy for a nuclear-free Australia. And thirdly, it actually introduces Australia into the arms race by having nuclear weapons here. And fourthly, they're very dangerous. In the event of an accident, we don't have the technology to cope with the aftermath of such an accident.
The Vega will call in at all major ports during its journey to Papua New Guinea, where it's expected to arrive in late October. The trip will also research the effect from waste products on the ocean's ecology.
After playing some superb tennis against the Czech Miloslav Meitworks, McEnroe's behaviour degenerated in the 3rd set. He argued over a net call, a foot fault, and a shot he thought was out. Then he exploded after being warned for shouting at the crowd.
Code violation, unsportsmanlike conduct. Warning, Mr. McEnroe.
Come on! This is absurd! I can't believe this!
In the next game, it was all over when McEnroe refused to face a serve and was penalised again.
Just equal 40 love. Let's play.
But McEnroe didn't want to and walked off court. Later he claimed a calf injury and not a dispute with the umpire was the reason for his departure. Besides today's fine, he could lose a further $10,000. His outburst could also cost him a lengthy suspension from the international circuit, which might prevent him from playing at Wimbledon.
We did this trial in
For a long
1975.
time, people with arthritis have put faith in the simple copper bracelet. It was cheap and worth trying even if it didn't work. In 1974, the Associate Professor of Chemistry at Newcastle University, Dr. Walker, decided to put the myth to the test and settle the issue once and for all. And the doctor was surprised by the results.
But instead of proving it was a myth, we found out it did have therapeutic value to quite a significant number of people.
The problem was to speed up the beneficial effect of the copper, and so Alka-Sal was born. It's a patented combination of salicylate painkillers and copper, which is rubbed into the skin. It's known to relieve sprains and lower back pain and to reduce swelling as well.
This one, I'm led to believe, is the first wholly discovered, wholly developed pharmaceutical that has patents worldwide.
Do you think it's strange that this product was developed by an associate professor of chemistry and not somebody from the medical profession?
No, I don't, John, because doctors in the medical training these days might do accounting one and bookkeeping rather than basic science. They haven't got time to think about basic science nor to do basic scientific research. They may do trials on a product established by a big multinational drug company. There's not much innovation in the medical profession.
packed public gallery at last night's council meeting reflected the sort of interest this issue has generated. The council decided Alderman Wilson, Saunders and Rigby, along with the town clerk and the tourist officer, join the Lord and Lady Mayoress on the official sister city visit to Newcastle on Tyne. There have been claims the trip represents a needless cost and will bring minimum benefits, but these are claims the Lord Mayor, Alderman John McNaughton, refutes.
If we're going to go into the sister city relationships, we must either do it well or don't do it at all. And as one of the aldermen pointed out in the debate, we don't have to get many tourists back to show a positive return for what we're doing.
The Mayor of Maitland, Peter Blackmore, sent telegrams today to Metro Meats and the Meatworkers Union to try and bring the parties together. He says this is the only way to settle the dispute.
Well, it's a devastating effect that nearly 200 people are out of work, and Maitland's unemployment figures at the moment aren't very healthy. But we look at the long-term effect that this has. That currently at the moment there's over $80,000 worth of wages that are lost to the city, without looking at the other businesses that are affected by people being out of work.
Do you think the consumers will feel some effect of this?
Yes, undoubtedly. People at the sale yards have said now that the cattle have to be transported to Gosford and the Wyong area, that it's going to add between 20 to 40 cents a kilo onto the price of meat.
One family devastated by the sudden closure and sackings lives in this modest house in Park Street. Noel Van Haren has worked at the abattoir for 34 years. His father was there when it opened. The Meatworks was a family concern. His wife Evelyn worked in the packing section, and her eldest son Ron was a slaughterer with 4 years' experience. He's 20 years old, has a mortgage which will cost him $125 a week, and had planned to get married. Noel says he'll find it hard to find a job. He says he's too old and knows no other trade.
They're not paying that, not paying no severance pay to anybody. They've stopped paying our 17% holiday loading, which we should be entitled to. They took all our sick pay off us. And so where we're going to go from there, we don't know. We're just, we're lost.
What sort of a future do you think you've got?
Well, up to now, I don't think we've got any future from here on, because we're too old to get another job anywhere else. To go into an industry to learn to do other sorts of trades, we can't do it. Because 34 years service up there I've had there, and as the family's been in it now, we just don't know where we're going to turn to. And the dole's not my line of work, I've been against that all my life.
Are you angry at what's happened?
I'm very angry at what's happened.
What sort of an impact does it have on your family?
It's terrible. So what about the other poor fellas?
How many kids did you say?
2.
And one's still at school?
Yeah.
And your other boy's also a worker there?
Yeah.
So the whole family's suddenly not getting an income?
No.
You got any idea how you're going to get by?
No.
There was another body blow for many of the meat workers today. Some had applied for unemployment benefits from the Department of Social Security and were knocked back. It appears that if you're sacked while on strike, you're not eligible for the dole.
That's fine.
This week, as Tomago Aluminium started dumping waste at Wallaroo, it was a worrying and disappointing time for members of the Wallaroo group. Terry Price, whose property is just 1.5 kilometres from the dump site, says he isn't satisfied with Tomago Aluminium conducting the contamination tests.
Well, to us, it's just like putting breathalyser units at the doorway to the local hotel, and the drunks can all breathalyse themselves on the way out, and if they're over the limit, dob themselves in. It's ridiculous.
Terry and his neighbours have decided to carry out their own periodic sampling of the creek water to have it privately analysed.
This stuff lasts a lifetime, and so from here on in we're going to do our own monitoring And if any of it gets into the creek, then their mates at the State Pollution Control will be the last of their worries. They'll have us to contend with.
Terry says he's thought about selling his property, but he can't bear the thought of leaving the home, the rainforest and the animal sanctuary that he's carved out of the bushland. Still, he says that the dump over the hill is an ominous reminder that it could all be spoiled.
I can't believe that in 1987 we've got government bodies that'll allow this sort of thing to happen. Why can't they just give us a guarantee that it's safe? Why should we grown people believe it's safe because they tell us it is?
The auditorium of the Belmont 16-foot Sailing Club was filled to overflowing for this year's award night. 150 students graduated in a number of courses, including metal fabrication, fashion design and data processing. School student Andrew Bryant took out the award for the data processing course. Andrew was participating in a new joint TAFE schools course where students from Gateshead and Belmont high schools have the chance to sample subjects outside the school curriculum and environment. The computer and general courses are becoming more prominent in TAFE colleges, but the trade teachers maintain that technical courses are still the backbone of these institutions.
Groups.
Every 6 or 7 days, an Australian court hands down a personal injury award of between $250,000 and $2 million. Australia now runs second to North America for the highest number of these types of litigations in the world. And that's where insurance companies like MMI come in. It says at this stage, though, it isn't sure how changes to state workers' compensation laws will affect it. Although MMI is the largest workers' compensation insurer in Australia, it's also involved in general company insurance. Last night, MMI held a teleconference using a satellite link-up with the main launch in Sydney's Regent Hotel to explain to the Newcastle brokers its reasons for dividing MMI into two divisions, general and workers' compensation.
As a result of the acquisition of the Australian operation of one of the largest underwriters in Europe, Allianz, the company has now decided, with the merging of these two companies, to look at the philosophy with the change within the workers' compensation within New South Wales, and as such they've decided that they require two companies, one specialising in general business, one specialising in workers' compensation.
It's easy to understand why women like Cheryl and Carmel are cynical about the International Year of Shelter for the Homeless. Both of them had been fighting for about 2 years to find a home for themselves and their children. Cheryl recently won her battle for a Department of Housing townhouse, but it took the refuge where she'd been staying for 4 months to evict her before the department would acknowledge that she and her 4 children were in dire need.
They evicted me.
From the refuge?
Yeah, because the Housing Commission wouldn't move otherwise, and they said I weren't desperate enough. So I went the last week when I got evicted. I went to stay with my mum. She has a 1-bedroom flat with 4. I had to sleep on the floor with 4 kids and a new baby.
How desperate
Carmel's
do you have
story
to be?
has been just as
The Housing
desperate,
Commission don't want to
depending
know.
on relatives and refuges for shelter. She says that real estate agents discriminate against single
really
mothers.
difficult. The estate agents don't want to know about you. Housing Commission, unless you... I mean, how desperate do you have to be? The Housing Commission don't want to know about you. Newmac can't get you in, there's not enough houses. It is really difficult. The feeling of helplessness, I think. There's just nothing you can do. You can shout, you can scream, you can write letters, you can jump up and down on the spot, but nobody listens. nobody wants to know about it.
Anne Leggett, who works in one of the city's refuges for women, says the problem of homeless women as well as those who are victims of domestic violence is on the increase. She says in the first 10 weeks of this year, the refuge had to turn away 130 women and 150 children. Anne says the state and federal governments are ignoring the problem, but she believes it can be tackled on a grassroots level with the help of councils.
The solution to the problem, I believe, is for people of the Hunter Valley to become aware of it and to put our resources together and to see in which way we can solve the problem. I appeal to the council to go through and to look at their housing that they have in their property section. Do they have more houses? Are there service clubs which are able to fix up these houses and to make more accommodation available in the Hunter?
Lord Mayor John McNaughton says he's not sure how many council-owned houses are vacant, but he says if the refuges find any that they believe are suitable, he will help the women to secure them.
Negotiating traffic on a busy stretch of highway can be hazardous at the best of times, so it's easy to see why the safety of collectors influenced the committee's decision. But according to Richard Face, the member for Charlestown, the legitimacy of some collectors was also in question.
There is an amount of evidence that people were collecting that shouldn't have been. I came across an incident in Sydney about 15 months ago where young 15-year-olds were collecting on behalf of a well-known charity, and they weren't in fact at all. When the police got there, they were in fact collecting for themselves.
Mr Face has been lobbying long and hard to have the practice stopped. He says bona fide fundraisers for legitimate charities can still collect money, but not with open buckets at traffic lights.
There is a formula set down by the charities branch where it can be collected in seal tins that are numbered, and then that puts the people that are collecting it above suspicion, and at the same time allows charities to be able to still collect.
This only applies, however, to door knocking and fundraising at street parades, marches and on the footpath. Once the ban on traffic collections is introduced, offenders face a maximum $1,000 fine.
The decision was announced at the school's P&C meeting last night. The news had been expected for some time, with 100 concerned citizens attending. Hunter Regional Director of Education, Alan Beard, told them the school is the right size and location to be turned into a much-needed special school.
It just so happens that Katara Public School is in the drawing area of another large school. Katara South Public School has room and could quite easily take these children. They wouldn't be travelling to school any further than most children travel to school, so I can offer them alternatives which would fit very well within our system.
Despite the department's decision, the P&C says they have a unique country-style school for their children and want to keep it.
We think there are a lot of special things that the children here are able to get simply by being in a small school environment. They mix with children across all age groups, and we think that helps them as just learning what life is all about.
You find out after a fair while of being in Parliament that some decisions are not palatable, but if you put off those decisions for expediency, you're only putting off the evil day, and I think nobody respects you in the fullness of time. I repeat, my major concern is making certain there's as little disruption as possible and cooperating with the parents to get the best for everybody.
It's not a scene from Old MacDonald's farm, but a preview look into Freewheel's latest production.
It's based on whether or not work can be enjoyable and whether or not we can control our own work.
And often, I think in life, there are lots of forces that stop us from controlling our lives. And a lot of those are external, such as the society, the pressures that society puts on us, and others are internal. The insecurities that we feel, our lack of ability to work with other people. It's an attempt to create a very popular entertainment about some very serious topics, and themes that would not normally be treated in the way that we have treated them.
Although the production will be performed mostly before an audience of young people throughout the region's schools, Director Brian Joyce says the cast will be travelling further afield.
It's going into schools from next week, and it will be then doing a series of schools around the country. It's actually going to go to Sydney later in the year. It's going to appear in the Playhouse. This is an hour-long version. There's actually a 2-hour version. There's a lot of material in it. It will be the Playhouse later in the year. We're looking to some theatre restaurant seasons later in the year and clubs.